We open with the introduction of Searchman, with him sniping cyberspace as he battles... Shadowman? Okay, what is he doing here? Well, whatever he's after, he's managed to hijack the security navies for the system they are in, whom Searchman deletes without hesitation despite their being allies. Yeah, the actor illusion makes me wish a different Jun Fukuyama character had actually managed to do that. Then again, maybe all he needs to do is be framed for a crime he didn't commit to get some real friends. Jun Fukuyama played both Lelouch v. Britannia in Code Geass and Phantom Thief of Heart Joker in Persona 5. Surprisingly, Shadowman appreciated Searchman's professionalism, withdrawing, for now. Searchman realizing he was after his country, Sharo's, main server control for a system called Control X, as ordered by the Dark Lord's benefactor. While Dark Miyabi will be paid later, when the series finally introduces the guy, a down payment is given in the form of 5 Dark Chips. After all, a capable Navi like Shadowman? Best to get him hooked on them now, before his own discipline would be able to overcome the initial withdrawal of the first one. But even if he doesn't use them, well, the job needs to be done.
Control-X さえ破壊されれば、我々ネビュラの衛星の位置を発見するものはなくなる。
Neto, in the meantime, is attending an airplane festival, highlighting the newest, most modern developments in flight technology, as well as historical planes. Surprising that the Smithsonian let it out of their museum. Then again, it could be a reproduction made for international events like this. Yeah, I actually saw the Wright brothers exhibit in person when I visited DC in 2019. It was really nice. However, at this exhibition is also a demonstration of the Control-X program, where it's explained what it actually is. An advanced air traffic control and surveillance system that can track all objects in flight the world round, enabling far safer traversal of flights as it tracks objects even up into space via an extended network of international satellites, which is what has Nebula concerned, as thus far, their personal satellite has remained undetected. I'm guessing it has a new means of detection beyond the standard conventional ones which said satellite would normally be shielded against. NASA and other space administrations in the real world already coordinate with air traffic control networks to prevent planes or anything else in the air from potentially being hit by anything falling from space. Hell, they already keep track of the movements of different satellites placed in orbit to make sure everything that is up there doesn't collide with one another. That's something they've done since the 70s. But sure enough, this is where Shadowman and his personal virus army come in, to try and break the system and cause an accident at the festival which would mar support for the system. Airport networks and airplanes themselves are highly firewalled due to the dangers of even one plane crashing could bring. And it jumps priorities so much that Meijin immediately calls Neto the second the report is distributed. And thus, he's on the case as he's literally already there. However, as Rockman deletes the virus threats, we see how Shadowman turned the security navies in the previous incident. The dark chips he got were to be used in the other navies. I think those are more security navies than Shadowman was given dark chips to turn with. You could have shown a smaller number of security navies being infected, then turning on their own number. That's a bit more destructive, a bit of chaos for Shadowman to then take advantage of to attack unnoticed until it's too late. Cause this way, there's a lot more present a plot hole. So now we have the standard hero's dilemma of whether or not we should kill someone who has been brainwashed into doing something malicious to save the victims they will create. Take a moral stand and not stain their own hands with blood, or try to find a way to save both. Fortunately, for Rockman at least, there is a pragmatist available to make the decision for him. No, I'm not playing the Euphemia clip. And for the record, this was the right choice in this situation. There isn't a way currently to remove the infection of dark chips. Either they won't return to themselves when the chip wears off before a calamity will happen, or they won't return at all and will be stuck in this state. These are lesser AI navies made specifically for security purposes. They can be restored from uncorrupted backup programs. But what always annoys me about what results from these kinds of stories is that a person is treated as being weak for taking a moral stand about not wanting to murder victims of someone else just because those victims are being used as pawns for another's machinations. As being unable to fight them to save others is a legitimate catch-22 where there is no easy solution, which the villain is deliberately placing a moral hero in. Oftentimes, unless you're stuck in that situation yourself, you don't know what you will do, and shows the strength of the principles you stand by. To not have empathy in such a situation and hesitate shows one of two things. Either sociopathy or dedication to a given cause, which is what we have with Searchman and how easily he pulls the trigger to stop them, as his dedication to protecting the larger world is greater than the emotional cost that would weigh upon him for destroying navies that literally can be restored from on-site backups. To say nothing about the training even a navi like this would have had to go through before this. Now, there is the extreme opposite of this situation as well, which, ironically enough considering Jun Fukuyama's playing the pragmatist in this event, also ends up represented in Code Geass, a person who so strongly believes in their morals that they will dictate terms by which they will bother to fight for and protect someone, and if those they wish to help violate those terms, they'll just kill them themselves. That kind of moral person deliberately turns a blind eye to suffering of the people and what's needed to help them, just because it doesn't sit well with what it might mean for their values that their own actions allow and propagate that suffering to occur. But of course, that's all a discussion for later when I eventually publish my thesis on Code Geass, that is currently scripted to be over 4 hours long. And here with this series, that wouldn't apply at all to begin with. Searchman and his operator Raika are soldiers. They've been trained to have to make hard choices for the benefit of the people they have sworn their lives to. Rockman and Neto, by comparison, are specifically deputized civilian children who are only meant to act against those who are performing the deeds of actual malice. They haven't been trained to deal with these sorts of circumstances, so of course they're going to hesitate. My issue with these matters, where I think writers screw up, as has been consistent within my reviews, is when an adult acts irresponsibly to their duties they take on that gets people killed because they refuse to make a meaningful choice or deliberately make the wrong one, knowing that was the wrong one, and bend over backwards to justify that wrong decision, which would have saved lives had they not prioritized their morals over people they could have saved. Or has been happening throughout this specific review series, a writer emphasizing the "they're children so they must be imbeciles" school of writing younger characters, not realizing that just because they are lacking in life experiences does not mean the characters are brain dead. But yeah, I'm not ragging on Neto or Rockman for not being able to pull the trigger on this. There is legitimately no justification for saying they should have, as that is not something they should have been expected to do. But by proxy, it is also wrong to try and put Searchman in the wrong for doing so since, again, they are navies that can be restored from backups. It certainly shouldn't have been a first choice option, but Searchman has already had to deal with Shadowman's same stunt and several other Control-X facilities around the world which had been destroyed in the same manner. He already knows there was no saving those navies without a greater loss of casualties, and thus had to do the dirty calculus of war.
他に方法があるのか。ダークチップのボートと化した奴らを救う方法はデリートする以外にない。
At least, again, at this point in the series.
戦いは非常である。くだらん情けは自分の命を失うぞ。
And again, this specifically is the part I hate about these kinds of stories that I preemptively went off on this tangent about. Because violence is not strength, and compassion is not weakness. But it's important to know when to apply each respectively. When we have this specific divide between characters in varying shows, though, it always breaks down the same way, and that the show treats the two as complete absolutes to show the compassionate one is weak, and the one who shoots without hesitation to save others being the complete asshole lacking a semblance of empathy, when it's more complicated and nuanced than that. I'll give the show this, though. I honestly prefer this take on the Searchman-Rika pair, as it's clear that there is an ideological and priorities difference that needs to be overcome, as opposed to the game's incarnation, where the pair instead have a massive stick up their ass and have to inflict themselves and their views on others. Searchman asking Rockman what he should have done differently shows they are open to other means, but none were available. It's just that line about compassion, the following declaration that'll kill anyone who gets in his way of his orders, that are the steps too far that writers concerning these matters constantly, and I do mean constantly, overreach with. I get that Japan has a general loathing of the military as nothing but government-approved murderers, and they're not entirely wrong. But it often forgets the reason why career soldiers actually exist, and that should be to protect the well-being of the people. Not the land, not the economy, business, or financial assets of a given nation, but the people. Which is why following this, that Searchman refuses to help when Shadowman creates a distraction by attacking one of the planes of the Control-X network to try and trick the two Saber Navis away from the central program, that the way his refusal to help irritates me. He can tell that this is a trap, that people's lives are being endangered in the short term to endanger more in the long term. But the problem is that is not what he says to Rockman when they are more than capable of splitting duties, with Searchman guarding the control point, while Rockman focuses on saving the endangered civilians. There is literally no reason to showcase him acting like this outside of artificially creating unnecessary conflict between them. As, for the most part, Rockman can handle Shadowman on his own. At least until Shadowman finally gives into temptation and uses a dark chip himself, with Searchman watching the entire affair from the separate server. Because this is Searchman's ability, to snipe beyond the limits of the virtual walls of cyberspace.
NANI?! させたというのか。ターゲット、デリート。
However, despite the apparent failure of this operation, Shadowman's activities did buy the Darkloid's benefactor enough time to complete a stealth system that will hide their satellite from even Control-X's detection, meaning this is a net zero gain for the day. With at least Rockman apologizing for being overly judgmental towards someone that has different responsibilities than themselves. The wrap-up. We have the Man from X, for Searchman coming over for an international special agent team-up. We have Brain Control! Ironic once more because Jun Fukuyama was guest starring this week. And we have Morality Play, for the argument between the two Navis and their different ideologies. Despite my tangents on this one, this is not a bad episode, and I hope I impressed that my problems with it are not against this episode in specific, but at the same type of problematic depiction that gets thrown out across media a lot that tends to use these plots in the same damn extremist ways that lack any real identification of nuance. To this episode's credit, both characters are in the wrong with how excessive the positions they take are, and by the end there is still shown that their view is not an absolute. Searchman showing the empathy needed to help out Rockman, and Rockman admitting that Searchman wasn't in the wrong for taking the actions he did, even though there are ones Rockman himself could not take. It is actually bad media, such as the series Ryuki, that says killing someone is bad no matter the circumstances, even in ones where not doing anything causes others to die. It is moral cowardice to claim such situations are an absolute, as it showcases the person making such declarations are not themselves a moral person, but making excuses to deliberately not do the right thing. We'll be seeing Rika and Searchman more as the series progresses, and we will be introduced to Rika in a few episodes as well, but suffice it to say the two are going to become staples of the show soon enough. So it is still good to show that they themselves are flawed characters with room to grow. And for them, it certainly is at how they place overimportance on fulfilling orders, and not thinking of the ways in which they could better fulfill them in spirit, but not necessarily by the letter of them.